another episode of Press Team to Start. My name is Gardiner, and this is Jackson. How's it going, my friend?
Hey, not too bad.
Nice. We have a bunch of stories we're going to talk about today. So let's review. The first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to have a correction about the Nintendo and Xbox emulator situation. We're going to talk about a new Steam Deck graphics card driver that's going to hit at some point in the future. We're going to talk about the Steam hardware survey and the surprise numbers in this hardware survey. And we're going to have a bunch of other stuff too. So let's just jump into the news, shall we? Or actually, let's jump into what have you been playing this week, my friend?
Yes, so I'm still continuing my Breath of the Wild 3 Hearts run, and that's going as well as you would think. Difficult.
Yeah.
But having said that, seeing everyone give such high praise to the Resident Evil 4 remake, I decided to play Resident Evil 4 HD, the one from 2005, I guess. I put that on the deck. However, what I did try is the HD Project mod, which is a 30 gigabyte mod that replaces basically every texture. And my dirty secret is that I have not actually played and beaten Resident Evil 4 originally, despite having, I guess, at least 2 copies, because I have it for the Wii back there. So I'm going through more or less the first time on my Steam Deck, and so I'm not sure necessarily what I'm looking for in terms of textures, but I am ending up stopping and seeing some stuff and saying, wow, that looked good. That looked real good. Nice. Just very high detail. So it holds up fairly well, and being on the deck, it doesn't use too much power. I'm sure I can get 3 or so hours with 11 watts. The main thing to grapple with is the controls, because it was from that era of time where they aren't super PC controller friendly. So, and with Resident Evil 4 back then, they had QuickTime events. So either your options are to play with a gamepad and have normal gamepad prompts in game of what to do, or you do what I do and you download a Steam controller / deck layout for Resident Evil 4, so you can have mouse and gyro. But then good fucking luck trying to figure out what the QuickTime events are.
Oh my god, yeah. That was one of my biggest problems with the Steam controller, is like when you download like a keyboard thing, a keyboard setting. Oh my god! And then the QuickTime events just didn't map to anything.
Right. Well, I got up to. I'm not far at all. I completed the first chapter because I just didn't have a whole lot of time to play it. I got up to the first chapter. You have the boulder where Leon's running from this boulder, and then what was it? The prompt is press D, and I just look at the control pad. I'm like, and just try mashing things, and Leon obviously dies immediately. So I have to stop and just look at things. Luckily, with the Steam Deck, you can immediately pull up the controller overlay, and if you're good and good about labeling stuff, you can label each input of what it specifically does in game.
Yeah.
As what this layout did, luckily. And what I messed up in my original Halo configuration, where I didn't label any of my settings or whatnot, so I couldn't figure out what buttons did what. So that was a hard time, but eventually I managed to get through it. Got some of the QuickTime events through. Completed chapter 1. Again, I need to get through the rest of it. Because Resident Evil 4 looks really good, the remake, and I would like to play it at some point, and I've heard it at least works decently on the deck. I think 30 FPS. Okay. I have not heard a whole lot of performance yet.
I've been playing, I just started playing Metroid Prime Remake
nice.
On my legitimate Nintendo Switch. Wink, winky wink.
Hoink, hoink.
Yeah. It's the Switch Pro, if you take my meaning.
Skin you can order from D Brand to make it look very much like a Switch.
Yeah, the Switch Lite Pro that doesn't have removable controllers. Oh,
Better ergonomics.
Yeah, that is able to also play PC games. Wink, wink. Okay. Anyway, enough of that. But no, it's pretty cool. I'm a big Metroid fan, so this is it's been I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I tried to start a game when Mark bought me that copy, but
nice.
I haven't got to it until now. But it's fun. I like my Metroid.
Yeah, I was surprised how well it performed on the Steam Deck just immediately. So it's pretty cool to see. And I do think it's a worthwhile remaster in terms of how much they worked to make it look updated nowadays, compared to Prime Hack, which I also think is great, but definitely visually different. Also, finding a physical copy was really annoying.
Yeah, I couldn't find one.
It took me a bit, and I eventually had to order off Amazon, unfortunately. Shame on me. But I got a physical copy. But I'm hearing a lot of stories, not only this, but just physical copies of games in general just seem to be just not as prolific in stores, apparently. Some people are saying I have no games at my store or anything. I have not seen that personally. Whenever I buy a game, I go to my favorite retro store, which has plenty of games in stock.
Yeah.
But places like Best Buy and Target and whatnot, apparently very late in the shelves. So I don't know. I don't know what the deal is there.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't been able to find it. I found a copy on Amazon, but I didn't buy it. Mark from Linux Gaming Central bought me a copy because he wanted me to play it.
Because he's a bro.
He's a bro, man. I love that guy. So should we move on to Deck Verified this week?
Yeah, let's get into Deck Verified of the week. We like to go through and highlight games that have officially been Deck Verified to just keep showing that developers are supporting the Steam Deck. We're going to start out with We're Screwed! Early access procedurally generated local co-op space action game for 1 to 4 players. Quote, blast your enemies, extinguish fires, clean up, repair, recycle, and explore where no one has screwed up before. Next, we've got Spiritfall, early access, 2D action roguelite with combat inspired by Phantom Fighters. I don't know what game that is. Continuing on, we have Drop, System Breach, fast-paced, quote, action strategy hacking simulator. I don't know how that plays out, but you can find out in the free available demo they have on Steam. We have Live Alive, a day one verified release. It's not out yet. A 2D HG remake of the Super Famicom RPG that was never released in the West. Play as 7 heroes across different time periods. It has a demo currently available, and it will release April 27th. It was originally released for Switch. I think it has had a good reception. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's releasing for consoles, other consoles, and Steam on April 27th.
Nice.
Next, we have Arcane Veil, a 2D open-world action RPG. It's up to you to complete your father's legacy and discover a long-lost treasure as you are thrust into a world full of discovery. Following up, we have Chop Goblins. From the developer of the retro-inspired shooter Dusk comes another retro-inspired shooter. A wide variety of settings and time periods that can be finished in 30 minutes. And you might say that's not a cool, that seems too short. I will say, hey, for $5 and 30 minutes, I think it's perfect. And finally, we have Anna's Quest, a point-and-click, hand-drawn, grim tale with a good dash of self-irony. That also has a demo available.
Yeah, I Chop Goblins looks pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie.
I played a little bit of Dusk and I enjoyed what I played, and it looks very cool. So, and having the massive backlog that I do actually like games that say, hey, we're not 1,000 hours long.
Yeah.
We've got, so, full price is $5. It's 30 minutes. I think that's totally fine. If it goes on sale, maybe you'll find it for $3 or something. I think it sounds like it's fully worth the $5.
Yeah. For sure.
For sure.
So, Jackson, it looks like we have a update and a correction that we need to issue.
Yes. So last week we talked about how we theorized why Microsoft pulled off emulators from their store or blocked them from retail mode. And we had made some assumptions of, Nintendo might be involved. It might have some legal ramifications. Well, since then, Microsoft has officially released a statement. Although it's something that we've kind of touched on last week, where Microsoft had said there was a long-standing policy that forbids emulators in the store. Right? That we established that last week.
Yeah.
While it's a long-standing policy, it has been long known that it was possible to get these emulators on retail mode. So, and on top of that, just the Xbox Series consoles being very powerful emulator machines, both in dev mode and retail mode. What might be more likely as to the reason why these emulators finally got axed on retail mode is that 2 months ago, Modern Vintage Gamer, and I'm not saying it's directly caused by him, but he highlighted in a video showing off the Xenia emulator on the Xbox Series consoles. I don't know when the emulator itself was released and updated for the consoles, but it was at least highlighted 2 months ago. In the video, it shows that these 360 games were being emulated very well. Because of that, it poses a tangible financial risk to Microsoft if people can just emulate these 360 games on their console without having to buy them off the Microsoft Store.
Yeah.
So at that point, that might be why, because Nintendo and PlayStation games were never available on the Microsoft Store. So why do they care if you're playing Mario Kart Double Dash on your Series S? If you can emulate Lost Odyssey, then Microsoft clearly has a reason to say, no, we're going to disable this all in retail mode.
Yeah, because then it's not Lost Odyssey, it's Lost Sales.
Right. Nice. And like people have pointed out, you can emulate in dev mode. Why does this matter? Luckily, we've still got dev mode to use. However, it is less powerful than emulating retail mode. So I haven't seen any information about this, but there's a good chance that the Xenia emulator just doesn't perform as well or well enough in dev mode to play these 360 games. And that's why I think that's probably the main reason there. Again, while I don't think Nintendo has threatened legal action, we know that Nintendo and Microsoft have worked together to bring Banjo-Kazooie to Nintendo Online, their subscription service, GoldenEye 007, and recently Nintendo and Microsoft inked a deal to get Call of Duty on Nintendo consoles, namely to help Microsoft acquire Activision.
Yeah.
All of these are Microsoft and Nintendo working together. So while there might not be legal actions and we'll never truly know, I don't think it's out of the realm possibility of someone at Nintendo saying, hey, this doesn't look good. We don't like this. Again, probably it's the Xenia emulator first and foremost. It's a non-zero chance that someone at Nintendo said, we don't like that this is happening. So that's the correction there. It's still unfortunate to see. I want to see what developers come up with of if there's any other way to get these apps on retail mode because, namely, the Xbox consoles are not very hackable, and one of the reasons is because they provide a dev mode so that you can just install emulators and such on it, opposed to like the PlayStation 3, which is incredibly hackable.
Yeah.
And people have already jailbroken the PS4 and put emulators on it.
Right.
So
well, I think the removal of this feature might serve as a PlayStation 3 removal of other OS moment for the Xbox. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can see developers like who made these emulators who are skilled enough to find exploits in Xbox being like, you know what, this pisses me off and I want to take revenge on Microsoft.
I think because for those unaware, the other OS for PlayStation 3 originally Sony sold it as an option to load Linux as an alternative operating system to, I think, get some kind of tax credit or something. Like, it was some reason because they wanted to get that classification of a personal computer. They eventually removed it because hackers were finding a way to jailbreak the PS3. That led to legal actions of they removed an advertised feature.
But it
emulators.
It also pissed off the people who were Linux users who wanted Linux on their PlayStation 3. And that served as motivation for more people to get on board and hack the PS3.
I'm not sure if it's gonna lend to more. It might lend to more people hacking the Xbox or trying to, or they might be jumping ship to double down development on, more open platforms like the Steam Deck. I don't know. We'll see what happens. So it'll be all interesting. Gardiner, it looks like the Mesa drivers is coming up with a big update. It's going to help the Steam Deck. You want to explain?
Yes. So Mesa 23.1 is going to ship with SteamOS 3.5 whenever that update drops. And apparently this is going to cut shader cache sizes by up to 60% on your Steam Deck, where resources, especially your internal storage resources, are quite limited, especially if you get the $400 Steam Deck. So this is exciting stuff because I don't know exactly how they're cutting them the shader cache in half, but it sounds like a lot of it has to do with the pre-compiling and the compiling at runtime is going to be improved significantly, which means you might not even have to cache some of, if not a majority of, the shader compilation. So hopefully it sounds like this will cut down on stuttering in the game when you're playing, and it's compiling shaders. So hopefully when we get this in our hands, we'll be able to, we'll have Carrie tell us all about what all the improvements.
You'll have bar charts for days.
Yeah. I'm notorious for not doing any of that kind of testing on my channel, but I leave it to the experts. I'm more of a fanboy, like a flag waving cheerleader. That's the word I was looking for. I'm a Linux cheerleader.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere that it's implementing a new Vulkan renderer into the pipeline. I could be very wrong about this as to why we're seeing these kind of performance increases. Oh, this is just linking back to my article. I forgot. Right. But anyways, it's all great to see because I've seen some people say that the shader caches don't get cleaned up when they uninstall games, so they can balloon, unfortunately. When we've had games that aren't precompiled, the stutters are not fun to go through. So any reduction there is just going to make things feel a lot smoother. I'm really happy to keep seeing these improvements to the Steam Deck, just through the Linux community and the device itself, just how much we're advancing in such a short period of time.
It looks like a lot of it so it looks like some of it is that like it's combining all of these shader cache files into a single file on the disk, which to me reads like there's a lot of like header data that's the same, and it's just kind of there's some data compression or data savings that way. Yeah.
Alternatively, I think multi files of that increase by 2% or something. But when you're cutting these single files down by 60%, I think it's a good trade-off.
Yeah.
So again, we'll see. We'll have YouTubers have full deep dives into this, I'm sure. And we'll just see how much of an uplift we'll get, which is going to be cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for the performance stuff too, because when Mesa 23.1 ships, it should also help with non-Steam Deck AMD graphics cards. So when we have like I turned my System 76 Thelio into a basically a Steam machine. I'm running Chimera OS on it, and I have to compile all the shaders before I launch the game, because on Steam Deck, it like Valve is just compiling the shaders for the deck's GPU, and they can just distribute that. But mine, they're not pre-compiling it for me, so I have to do it myself before I play games on it. So hopefully this will let me skip a lot of that and go right into playing the game and not have any of those issues. So I'm very excited about this change.
Yeah. Speaking of some numbers, hey, we got the Steam hardware survey for March with some very interesting numbers. Gardiner, what do you think?
Well, it looks like Simplified Chinese increased by 25%, which is a wild increase. That reads to me like there's been some statistical errors or counting errors or something like that going on, because 25% of the Steam user base didn't suddenly come online in China. You know what I'm saying? Like sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say Valve. So Gaming on Linux, Liam had reported last time we saw such a thing, it was an error. And in that article, he links to Valve admitted to announce some flaws in their hardware survey. So they have a whole quote where some kind of flaw was counting cyber cafes to overcount users. So if that has been solved and this isn't somehow an error, that's huge. Like that is a massive influx.
Yeah, I mean that means that like China is more than half of, or at least Chinese speaking users are more than half of the overall Steam user base, which is wild to me. But I mean, I guess it makes sense, right?
Right.
Yeah, 51% of users on Steam have Simplified Chinese as their primary language. That means English is 22.83% now. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the Asia market's huge. There's just, that's why we see some games like aim specifically that or release only for that. I think Diablo had, I thought Diablo had specific like builds or versions that were really targeted that market, but I could be wrong. Along with that 25 increase, we saw Linux fall from 1.27% down to 0.84%. 0.084%.
0.84%. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
That's a pretty stark drop. Although I always have to note when we talk about these numbers specifically, these are relative numbers, right? So, and because Windows is more popular in Asia than Linux is, of course that number is going to drop, with all these Chinese speaking users on coming online here. So if the total number of Chinese users has increased by 25%, then it makes sense that the number of overall total a relative number of Linux users will drop, even though the number of Linux users has probably gone up. It hasn't increased nearly as fast as 25% of Chinese users.
Yeah, no, there's no way we could have gotten that many Steam Decks into people's hands.
Right.
But despite the possibly getting up to 3 million sales this year.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's good to keep in mind that those Linux numbers haven't gone anywhere. You know, if there was a drop, it's not truthfully going to be a small drop. It's not going to be truthfully a large drop. That the Steam Deck is truly carving a new area for Linux gaming as it gets into more people's hands.
Yeah.
So it's go ahead.
Oh no, sorry.
I was gonna say it's just always fun to see the hardware surveys of what people are running. Even when it gets scary of looking at how many people are running Windows 7 now, which is horrifying.
Yeah. Oh my god. Wait. OS version. I'm looking at it. It's 0.5% for Windows 7.
Well, Valve officially no longer supports Windows 7, 8, and 8.1 as of I think last month or so because of the embedded version of Chrome requires it to have specific stuff that is only in Windows 10. So that's why they dropped it. But just the idea that Windows 7, which was, I believe, ended support in 2020, getting up to 2023 and still having a good portion, I forget what the original number was, but we have an article on ViewSync, I think, of what that number was. Just large enough to be really scary.
Yeah. I was wrong. It's 1.31% of Linux or of Windows 7, Windows 8.1 users on this month's hardware survey, which is
horrifying.
Just wild.
Horrifying.
Yeah. So I wanted to look at the number of Linux or the number of Steam Deck users, like, because you can, if you sort like the graphics card GPU, you can see the AMD custom GPU 0405, and that only dropped by 0.9%. So I think like that should, because like it's at 18%, but like the number of Linux users dropped by, what was it, 0.43%, right? Or it's down. Wait a minute, what am I looking at? I'm so confused. Yeah,
numbers are hard, guys.
I'm so bad with numbers. 0.43% is the change, right? Right, that makes sense. So it went down by 0.43%. So if we look at the hardware survey, if we go to the custom GPU, it only dropped by 0.9%, which means that the number of Steam Deck users grew more than the number of Linux users did relative to. Does that make sense? That does. Now my mind's boggled. I can't do math at this early in the morning.
It really is very early, and I failed a lot of math classes, so I cannot help you here.
I've been awake since 5 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, I went to bed at, I think, 1 a.m. after I finished prepping this doc. So
yeah, I saw that. You needed to sleep more.
Hey, if I was a city, I'd be New York City, because I am the city that never sleeps. The bags under my eyes very much tells that. Anyway, speaking of Windows, there was a leaked Microsoft Hackathon presentation demonstrating a possible handheld mode for Windows. So this was originally tweeted out, and I didn't put the original tweet out in my doc, unfortunately, but we have, hopefully we'll, it's by Walking Cat on Twitter. And it links 2 videos of an internal presentation. One, going over this new market of handheld PCs, gaming PCs, and the Steam Deck, how much that has been around, how much, sorry, how much that has gained popularity, how this is a growing market, and how Windows is a subpar experience at best on these handhelds.
That's a generous way to put it. Subpar.
Right. So the presenter then goes to show off some of these concepts of what can be done to improve that experience. And this hackathon, I don't know how long it was, if it was a week or it was a short period of time. So when you look at the videos, the examples they show is very bare bones, but I don't fault them for that, because again, if you got such a short period of time and you're just trying to inspire, like, hey, we should do this, fair. So one, it's designing a UI that is controller friendly, that can launch games from any type of launcher: Game Pass, Steam, EA app, Epic Game Store. It's also, and they demonstrate this on an Neo Next, a controller friendly keyboard. What I think is actually very important, an onboarding wizard to walk you through handheld mode and how it functions and what to expect. That would be huge for getting new users to get Windows working with these handhelds. And improvements directly aimed at the Steam Deck of having native controller support out of the box for the Steam Deck, figuring out how to solve the portrait screen issues with a lot of these devices, where some full screen apps and games can't render properly because they are confused by this portrait screen. So they either render half a screen or just fail out. So the presentation ends with essentially the narrator pleading Microsoft to pay attention to this space and help try to build goodwill with PC gamers, and dedicating some resources to this.
I'm really skeptical about all this, because
sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, like, the guy that started it, didn't he have like a Reddit post or something where he's like, they're not actually gonna do this?
I was just about to, and I first saw this from today's Mr. Sugiano video. I had not seen this before, but there is a Reddit comment responding to Tom Warren's original reporting of this, stating, "I started this hackathon project and it didn't go much of anywhere, but this article uses words to make it seem like it's something under development. Problem is, we just didn't have the right engineers to do a lot of what we wanted to do in the short hackathon project timeframe." He ends with saying, "Not sure if it matters, but the reasons I wanted/needed to use Windows are for mods and trainer support, as well as support for a bunch of other stores, Game Pass, GOG, etc. I just did not want to fight and struggle getting these things running in SteamOS." Because that's to say, that's not it's not impossible to get these things on there. I wrote a whole long guide of how to get Vortex Mod Manager installed on the Steam Deck and to manage your Skyrim install from an SD card. And we've got the Hero Games Launcher, which has native controller support and works fantastically with the Steam Deck. It's just, like I had said before in a previous podcast, there's some people, despite being technically proficient in these things, just don't want to spend the time setting this stuff up.
I've seen a lot of people in the comments of my videos, they're like, Windows is obviously superior for gaming because I know how to use it, essentially. It's like, I don't have the time to learn how to use Linux and appreciate the freedom that it gives me, which is the subtext of what they're saying. And it's like, that's, I see that a lot, because it's like, I know, I understand people are busy, but like, if you take a moment, just a moment, and like unlearn what you think you know about how to use a PC, Linux is the better experience.
Well, not only that, but if people will say that, but then they'll go buy a new console that has a completely new interface and new functions, like a Nintendo Switch,
Yeah.
like the PS5, and there's some things you have to unlearn and relearn. Like, it's not to the degree of switching from a Windows interface to like a GNOME Linux desktop. But if you pick up a Steam Deck, you don't have to necessarily you never have to go into desktop mode. That's never something you are forced to do at any point. And just the Steam Deck UI is intuitive enough that you can navigate and get around easily. If you wanted to go into desktop mode to do more advanced things, you've got so many different tools that have simplified these processes, like EmuDeck. So, and not that also is to say KDE is out of the box, looks very similar to Windows. If you like that or not, but that lowers that learning curve for a lot of people to say, oh, there's my start button, here's the taskbar, here's the notification tray. Great, I've got all that. So there's far less you have to learn, and then you just have to get your head around a little bit of the terminal, which when I've seen a lot of guides for the Steam Deck, it's just, hey, enter this one thing and you're good, or enter two things and you're fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to. Now, you should never sudo enter any commands you don't fully understand. Never do that. But trusted sources that list commands and explain and break down what these are, that's fine. I tend to not copy and paste things into my terminal just because, but there's so many guides that make things very simplistic.
Yeah.
To continue on, I had wrote about this, saying that I think it's really great to see someone at Microsoft try to campaign for a heavier focus on these gaming handhelds as they reach a broader market. That, hey, the PC gaming market is huge, and that's a big portion that we cater to with Windows. The big issue is it's not an optimized operating system for these handhelds. You still have fat Windows in there that you're just trying to work around to finagle into a gaming handheld. So you still get all the bloat, you still get all the telemetry, you still get a higher RAM utilization, idle utilization, compared to something like SteamOS or Chimera OS, where it is hyper focused on gaming. It trims down the fat, it focuses on what you want, which are games, and eliminates a lot of background processes, where Windows, that's never going to be an option, because Microsoft's never going to want to turn off their telemetry that collects things. They're never going to want to turn off their search that incorporates Bing news articles and crap like that. It's always going to be in the background unless you rip it out, as some people have done with like Tiny 11, which, might I say, some people have highlighted this weird custom version of Windows that is designed to run on very low-end hardware. But just don't do that. Don't grab a Tiny 11 or another kind of weird version of Windows off a Mega Drop or something and install it on a system, because it's terribly insecure. It's
wild to me that people would even think that is a good idea. Like,
right.
Even like, Microsoft Windows is already a proprietary system, so you have literally no way of knowing what it's doing in the background unless you have security research in your DNA. If you know how to take a binary apart and figure out what it's doing. But the fact that someone would then download a customized version of Windows that still has no, there's no chain of custody. Nobody knows where that, what that thing is doing. It's wild to me.
And I believe whoever was working on Tiny 11 also said, hey, I don't recommend running this on any main systems, because you have no availability to update this in the system. Because again, whoever made this ripped out so much of Windows that fundamental functions like updating and virus protection and all these things is just gone, and you are left with who knows what's currently in the system, and just such a cobbled together like, I don't want to bash anyone who's made these projects. It's just I don't like seeing people on YouTube videos highlight like, hey, look at this OS that's going to make your gaming system so much better. Don't.
No.
Do not do that. Either grab the official Windows ISO and go through what has been documented of debloating it, or alternatively, grab Linux. Just grab a Linux distro like Chimera OS that's much slimmer and will do pretty much most of everything you want. That's going to be a more efficient system, unless you truly need something that's only going to work in Windows, like the Adobe Suite or something. And at that point, just grab the official ISO.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
But moving on, or adding to all of this in the story, what hasn't necessarily been the issue is the UI, because we've had a bunch of front ends come out for Windows to launch these things. So like you originally had Steam Big Box, and now the Deck UI on just natively in Steam that is controller friendly, that you can just launch pressing, I think, the guide button on an Xbox controller in Windows. On top of that, you have other front ends like Launchbox's Big Box, which is, I think, the most predominant one. It's a paid proprietary software I've used in the past. It's kind of cool. That's a good way of launching your ROMs and games from multiple stores, including the Game Pass Windows Universal Windows Platform apps that are fairly difficult to, I mean, it's not impossible, but it's a hassle to get to launch from Steam. And then you also have free options like Play Night, which has a very powerful theming community that have shown off themes that look just like fully identical to the PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series interfaces or the Switch interface. So there's a lot of options out there for that front end. And there's also projects dedicated to try to develop things like the quick access menu for Windows. I know there's a project that has been showing that off, of just configuring performance settings or launching games or other things that's from a controller interface very easily with its own sort of controller keyboard that can be brought up. So it's all out there, but you have to be the one that finds it and puts it on your system. Just adding that headache of, getting it all there. And so recently, the Fox had released a video speculating that the Xbox Series S was a Trojan horse to get developers on board for developing for an Xbox handheld. And I think he's a very intelligent guy. I think he's on the money for a lot of stuff. I think in this case that we are seeing someone who had worked at Microsoft that campaigned for this handheld mode back in 2022, and then saying, hey, it didn't really go anywhere. I think that lends itself to disproving that theory of the Xbox Series S being a Trojan horse. I think Microsoft is fully committed to Game Pass cloud gaming and whatnot, and I think no one's truly thinking about handhelds outside of, the Steam Deck could get us some more sales in a way if we have just a small guide of how to get Game Pass working on there.
Here's the thing. I feel like the hackathon, like making Windows more handheld friendly thing, if that truly fell through, it's because Microsoft cares about Xbox when it comes to gaming, and they don't care about gaming on PC. Like they have the gaming, you can get PC Game Pass or whatever, but it's not the same really as Xbox Game Pass. People like it, but whatever. What I'm talking about though is like, I could see Microsoft working on a handheld Xbox, but not a handheld PC, right? Like a handheld Xbox. The problem is, though, I think Phil Spencer is too much of like a hardcore gamer himself to actually have a handheld. You know what I'm saying? Like for them to put money behind a handheld Xbox, and with the way PlayStation failed so spectacularly with, you know, both of their handheld systems, it's been a Nintendo game the whole time with handhelds. I mean, even Sega, like their handhelds were not that great either, if I'm being honest.
Well, anyone looking at the space, it's clearly gaining traction. Of the handhelds are getting very competitive, but anyone looking at the space and looking at the history knows, oh, we're not going to sell Nintendo numbers. That's not going to happen.
Right.
If we spend all this money trying to develop, you know, a streaming device, well, look at the G Cloud. That's not doing well. If we make a PC handheld, we're going to have to compete with the Steam Deck, which is going to be difficult to subsidize. Now, if it's all the sales are happening through the Microsoft Store, Microsoft will have that 30% cut, I believe, to subsidize that, like Valve is doing. However, it's quite obvious to Microsoft that people don't buy their games through the Microsoft Store. They buy them through Steam or GOG or whatnot. So they kind of have to come in with their tail between their legs of saying, okay, well, we gotta bake in Steam support. Because that's where everyone's getting their games, not from us. Yeah. The biggest advantage they have is that Game Pass, where having used it, you know, it's nice to download those Game Pass games directly to a computer. But like you said, it's not the same as on a console, where that library, they definitely have a library that is far more targeted at the console of having more games announced and available for the Xbox compared to PC, where it's not as much, or there's not as like AAA hitters right on day one. I think it's fairly comparable to what the Xbox has, but there's definitely some games that I've noticed, at least throughout like last year, it seemed like came to Xbox either first or only compared to PC Game Pass. But that's really the biggest Trojan horse of getting people to use universal Windows platform apps is through that.
The thing is with Game Pass is Microsoft's already losing money on Game Pass. And so that would not be able to subsidize a handheld hardware, or it wouldn't be able to subsidize, if they made like a custom version of Windows for a handheld. You know, I just don't see that being a viable business strategy for them. Like if they're gonna move forward on a handheld, you know, if Microsoft's gonna focus any of their energy on handheld gaming, it's going to be an Xbox handheld. It's not going to be Windows on a handheld device. I just can't. I don't see, that doesn't seem reasonable to me.
Right. And I also, again, what I said about Sony's streaming only, remote play only handheld that was speculated or rumored, I just don't see a reason why developers like Sony or Microsoft, Sony has had some failures. PSP was successful. Vita not so much. When they are trying to come up with some new way of entering this handheld market, but it's either half baked or it's just not on the mark, compared to just releasing your games on Steam and making it deck verified or at least playable on deck, you're opening up such a wider market because, you're not catering to people that are just at the gaming PC. You're catering to people who want to pick up and go, want to play these games in like a Switch form factor, but need more power or more game selection. So, that's for Sony, that's a whole new market for people that either have a PlayStation console and are double dipping, or people who don't want to buy a PS5 and were never going to, so they would have never gotten those sales anyways. with Xbox, it's a little different because they have this initiative to bring their games to PC anyways. But there's some games that aren't coming to Switch or anything. And if you're an individual that really likes playing games on the couch or in bed or just relaxed, it's better to be doing that, having Steam take the 30% and you get more sales on the Steam Deck than not having to develop a whole new platform, sinking all of this research and development costs into it to potentially fail or just compete against Switch and now the Steam Deck, because it's getting more and more competitive.
Yeah. I feel like it would be really hard. It would be a hard sell to go to an Xbox fan too and be like, hey, by the way, this is almost as powerful as a Series S. Like it's more powerful than a Switch. You know that, right? Like I just don't see Xbox fans wanting that, and I don't see like handheld like PC gamers clamoring for a Windows gamepad version. I don't know. It's interesting.
There's certainly a number of people that want to get like Windows working on the deck. For like Warzone or Destiny and things, the last holdouts of developers that just aren't supporting the deck. And I get that, but again, it seems like the benefits versus the negatives of installing like Windows on a deck is just too immense. It just does not make sense to me. If you do it fair, but I do not think it's a good experience. And it will be interesting to see if the Ally ever comes out or if we see stronger pushes with these Windows handhelds, what that looks like. But again, I just think the best experience for PC gaming on the go is the Steam Deck so far.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. Hey, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm wearing I got a nice little shirt here. You like this shirt?
Oh, wow. Where'd you get that shirt, Gardiner?
Store.heavyelement.io. It's a nice shirt. I have a bunch of these. I have one.
Do you have an Xbox shirt?
I actually do have. Well, it's not an Xbox. I call it the sinking green logo because I don't want to like infringe anybody's IP. But it's cool. We got a bunch. I'm sure they'll be on screen right now, giving you more work to do, Jackson.
Ooh boy.
But yeah. So no, they're fun. They're fun designs. We have a bunch of like designs that are inspired by retro consoles. Well, that's what I'll say. So go over there and check that out. It's pretty fun. Hey, Jackson, did you hear about Half-Life Alyx?
I did. That it's now fully playable without VR and runs on deck.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked about that. I tried playing Half-Life Alyx with the no VR mod on my Steam Deck last week. Last Friday, actually, doing a live stream. And I got to the point where you get into Russell's like lab, but I couldn't. There was no like duck button. I couldn't figure out what the duck button was, so I couldn't like crouch through the door to like go into his lab. So I ended up getting stuck there and not being able to progress. But this is like, and I had like the funny thing is I had just talked about this no VR mod like the week before they released this latest update, and it's pretty great.
Yeah, it's really cool. Apparently, the developers of the mod say that it's now fully playable from start to finish, in flat, no VR. And Liam from Gaming on Linux had shown off gameplay of Alyx running on his deck at 60 FPS. So, it's a fairly optimized game, and when you're only rendering half of what the game typically renders, then you're gonna get more performance. So it's not unreasonable for it to perform really well on deck. So that opens up a whole new market of people who don't want to play VR for whatever reason, cost, or they physically cannot play VR because they get sick or something. now they can actually experience Alyx instead of having to watch like a let's play on YouTube and stuff. So that's kind of cool. I still we've both played Alyx, and I think you can agree that the better experience is through VR. It's just
yeah, there's no doubt.
Right. I think it's really cool that people have the option now. I think you lose just so much if you are playing flat.
Yeah.
It's truly, because when I went through again after the water shader patch, and I just picked up a bottle of vodka and stood there looking at the liquid move
just
through the bottle for about
5-10
minutes, like it's so amazing. And I know there was like a teacher that ran a class during the pandemic who used the glass and the expo markers, or the dry erase markers, in that opening area to like as his whiteboard, which seems crazy and hilarious. But it's so cool, and it makes me a little sad that Valve dropped index specific features for Alyx to make it wider to the whole VR spectrum, because I do want to see more games push the index hardware, or at least just push VR in general, because again, I think there's some stagnation there, and the only thing pushing it, or the only big news right now, is PlayStation's PSVR 2, which apparently has not been selling well, which is sad because everyone says it's just a fantastic headset.
Yeah, and even the controls on the PSVR 2 seem pretty great, especially compared to the first one.
Right.
Yeah, I've played VR. I have a Valve Index. I enjoy the experience, but there really isn't anything like Half-Life Alyx for VR. Like, that's one of the biggest like disappointments, is like how great Half-Life Alyx is, and how like most other games just pale in comparison. I mean, there are some great experiences, like, Moss is awesome. And
I like Bone Lab a lot.
I can't play Bone Lab. It makes me so sick. Like, I have to teleport. I cannot do like locomotion. It makes me, and people are like, oh, you just got to get your VR legs. And it's like, no, I fundamentally, I have like tried it. Even when like when you close in like your field of view to do the locomotion, it makes me so effing sick, dude. I'm like, I can't.
And that's just, there's a good portion of people that just cannot get past that because they physically are not capable of. I got lucky and I got my VR legs, and there's very little that makes me sick in VR at all ever. The only point was when I ran what was it? Asgard's Wrath or something. It was the Oculus exclusive. And I tried running it on my system at the time, and it just chugged at 9 frames a second.
Oh my God.
And I just, seeing that slideshow as I was moving started to make me feel ill. Other than that, I've had no issues. So when I do manage to play, Boneworks, Blade and Sorcery, and Alyx are a lot of my go-tos, because it's just so intoxicating to have that interaction and the physical combat of aiming and shooting.
The physical combat is like where it's at for me, because like the thing is, like, the teleportation for movement like really does take me out of the game in a lot of ways. And but when you're like being shot at and you have to duck and like actually like crouch behind like a car in the game, and like you're suppressing fire and stuff, it's like there's nothing like
peeking.
It. And peeking and
peeking. That's not, we haven't seen that in like games for quite a long time, but now you're like actually peeking. And if you can find, I don't know if there's been any games where you can do this, but if you find an object that has a reflection, you could do the actual like the trope where you take the shard of a mirror and look around the corner or something. Like you've got that interaction,
right?
and it just adds a whole new layer to a game.
Yeah.
I don't know. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm hoping that like the next Half-Life HLX or whatever Tyler McVicker's been reporting on,
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that that is another VR experience, but I'm skeptical that it will be. I mean, has Valve reported on how many copies they sold of Alyx?
I don't know.
I'll look that up.
I feel like it was in the top sellers for a bit, but obviously because of the entry barrier being higher of you've got to buy a VR headset, which at best was $300, at worst $1,000. Not as easy to sell than a handheld that's $400 to place a good portion of your gaming library. I think if there have been rumors about this standalone VR headset from Valve, codenamed Deckard, I think if that has any legs, then I think Valve, like what they did with Alyx of developing a game for their headset, I think it makes sense that they would target a game for the Deckard, not specifically for that hardware, but just another VR game.
Yeah.
And advertise the Deckard with that. I hope that's the case. I also hope that it's not like Aperture Desk Job, where it was very cool and fun, but it was absolutely just a tech demo for the Steam Deck, and not a full game.
Yeah. I feel like Valve, I mean, we've heard that Valve is working on 3 games right now. And it's like, I think that they might, with Deckard, they might release Half-Life Alyx, like maybe some kind of re-release or something. They might have another VR game in the works. And I suspect VR games are going to be like just a much smaller scale than Half-Life Alyx, unfortunately, because there isn't really the market there. Like there's hardcore VR gamers, and then there aren't like other people who like casually play VR, in my opinion. Like
they bought an Oculus Quest as a novelty, and then they didn't pick it up again.
Right.
I even haven't touched my VR headset in quite a while.
Same.
That's mostly due to me either not having the time to set it up or just not feeling good enough physically to do it.
Yeah. Well, I retired. I had a living room gaming PC that was basically it was for VR, and I hadn't touched it. I mean, I hadn't turned it on in almost a year. Wow. And I was like, I need to do something with this hardware, because it's like just sitting here doing nothing. And I ended up turning it into my one of my servers now. So, but the thing is, it's like Half-Life was like the only game that I played besides like Beat Saber, you know? And also I found the numbers here. Half-Life Alyx sold 149,000 copies in 2019. So 149,000 copies. That's, if they're selling it, what were they selling it for? Do you know?
I want to say it was full price. I want to say it was either $50 or $60.
Yeah. Right now it's 59. So at $60 a pop, that's like $8 million, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they made some money on it, but probably not as much as they were hoping.
Right. And not as much as they're going to be making off the Steam Deck. So,
right. 149 times $59.99 is 8,938,000. So
I think it's going to take some more use cases and more developer support to see VR pick up again. I think we need to see some really intuitive games that demonstrate this is only doable in VR to pique people's interest. This is
what I think. I'm skeptical of VR, honestly. Like the thing is, there is a barrier. Like VR is intuitive for people who are already gamers, but who also want to get up and move around. That's a very small overlap in that Venn diagram, right?
Right.
So it's like the controllers need to completely disappear, and you just have to use your hands, right? But then you also need to be able to not just pantomime pulling a trigger or something. You know what I'm saying? So there's like lots of like little issues that equate to this huge barrier of entry for most people. If there was like some kind of way that you could strap a control, like just a very small controller to your hand, and it could like provide a trigger or provide some haptics for your bare hands, that would work pretty well. Bare hands.
I think VR has the potential of having not quite the Wii effect, but the Wii where people who'd never played a game, when they pick up the Wii, kind of intuitively know, oh, this is how I hold it, this is what I'm doing because of these motion controls.
Yeah.
You have games where it's just pick up and grab and manipulate objects, which is very easy to communicate to people. However, when you are involving other button presses for other functions you can't mimic in VR for whatever reason, like you were saying, you then have the issue of whoever's playing can't look at the controller.
Yes.
And there's so many times I've seen people who don't play games regularly have to look at the physical controller to figure out what button they need to press.
Yeah.
And if you remove that fallback, that safety net, people are just going to freeze and they're not going to have a fun time because they don't know what to do.
Right.
So you've got, and add, motion sickness and the cost of entry to that, and you make it a very high barrier to entry.
Yep. Yeah. I don't know. I think VR is cool. I don't see it becoming wildly successful anytime soon.
Yeah, unfortunately. Speaking of other unfortunate news, in the good news, Capcom has removed Denuvo from Resident Evil Village.
Heck yeah.
The bad news, they've added microtransactions to the critically acclaimed Resident Evil 4 remake.
Are these purely cosmetic microtransactions?
No.
Oh, no.
We'll get into it. So starting with Denuvo, back in the day, Denuvo found or compared two copies of Resident Evil Village on similar hardware. One that was the retail release that had Denuvo, and the other was a cracked copy with Denuvo removed. And they noted that the cracked copy was performing substantially better than the legitimate copy, which is, not great if you're a paying customer. And so Denuvo finally coming out is great to see. However, it comes 2 years after the launch of the game. Now, why this is happening, either it's to generate sales from people that would never touch a Denuvo game, or, it could be that there's a license that expired for Denuvo and they don't want to renew because there may be contracts that are ongoing for that. I know Denuvo has some kind of Denuvo secured DLC, which is supposed to be DRM for microtransactions, which is weird to think about. But if you think about it in the context of a free-to-play game, that makes more sense. And if that's the case, you're going to need something that is more of a constant upping that subscription rather than paying once and then the game lives on for however many years.
Right.
And there's been some debate as to how effective Denuvo is. As of right now, I don't think Resident Evil 4 has been cracked. However, there are cases where Resident Evil 7, which had Denuvo, within a week was cracked, and then Just Cause 4, the worst case I saw, was cracked in a day and it had Denuvo. Those are older titles, so things might have changed for Denuvo, but where there's a will, there's a way. There's another YouTuber that went to defend the effectiveness of Denuvo, citing that, and the YouTuber is Yet T. He argued that these cracks are only temporary because every time the game gets updated, then the crack no longer functions because they've got to re-crack it through whatever Denuvo has done. And even when it is cracked, it becomes highly unstable. So it's not a pleasant experience to go through. And once Denuvo gets removed from games like Titanfall, the game gets immediately cracked. So I can't say for certain how effective Denuvo is. I can just say it's completely reviled by every gamer that has to put up with it. No one enjoys it. And it's just it's punishing consumers for paying full price for a game they legally bought, while pirates might be having a better experience.
Right.
So it's good to see that it came out of Village, but I wish it wasn't there in the first place.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous. But yeah, so and then the microtransactions get added, right?
Right. And this comes notably after the review cycle praising this game to high heaven, where everyone fell in love with this game. And then suddenly, when they've put in the Mercenaries DLC, which introduces this mercenary kind of wave-based mode from the original game into this game, that's a free addition. Great. Now suddenly there are weapon upgrade tickets that you can buy to upgrade your weapons and things, to eliminate that grind. And this is very common for Capcom to do. They did it with Devil May Cry 5 of selling red orbs and immediate unlocks for the super versions of the playable characters. It's these paid shortcuts. And, you're going to have people argue, just like in multiplayer games, of it's just cosmetic, and in single player, oh, it's just speed up shortcuts. Who cares? It's just single player. Well, you get this issue like Assassin's Creed Odyssey and such, where if you bought a deluxe edition, it came with a permanent XP boost, which alternatively, if you didn't, was a microtransaction. That was a one-time sort of paid downloadable thing that adds this permanent boost. The issue now being is the game, people said you needed this boost for the game to not feel like a slog because the grind was just so bad. You had Star Wars Battlefront 2, the recent EA release, where the star cards and all of the microtransactions added up to taking, I think someone had said, like 200 hours just to unlock one hero character or something, like Darth Vader, like a substantially long time. So you get these games that are artificially slowed down in this progression to incentivize you to pay for these shortcuts because it's just not fun anymore.
Right.
Like they want to sell these shortcuts, and you get some people that are, working adults that don't have the time to sink however many hours into this game, and that's understandable. But then you also have gamers that are playing this game that just hit this wall of, this is not fun anymore. I just want to get past this part, and it's only $5. I'm just going to do it. And that's not fair. That's really dumb.
Yeah. I'm quite sympathetic to what you're saying. However, at a certain point, people need to learn to just not play these games anymore. Like, I mean, at the risk of blaming the victim, it's like you're going to a BDSM bar and then complaining that you're getting whipped. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's not a great example, but it's like, dude, it's like you're gonna go play Star Wars Battlefront 2, right? Or whatever the heck the game is. And you know that this is how the game operates. You know that this is what they do. Are you willing to buy the thing or not? Because it's pay to play at this point. Like, if you want to have, it's so frustrating to me. It's like, oh, this game is so unfair. Well, don't play the game. Like, honestly, just don't play it.
I get what you're saying, though. From me, coming as a big Star Wars nerd who loved the original Battlefront 2 back on PS2, PSP, even played so many hours of that. Seeing the announcement of Star Wars Battlefront 2, hey, we've addressed all these concerns. We've really improved it. We've made it a lot better. We put the content you asked for in the game. Being really excited about it, and then see these microtransactions happen. It just sinks my heart. But I can avoid the game until, they've removed the microtransactions better. I do own it now, and I bought it for cheap on sale. I can wait that out. I have been waiting out a bunch of these games that I don't agree with, whatever reason of the company doing something or the game itself having these microtransactions. However, there are people that have addictive personalities where this is really what preys on them, where they just want to enjoy video games, but then they're presented with these loot box mechanics or these sort of things like that kind of gambling aspect that play into whatever part that's susceptible to that, and they just end up spending far too much money on these dumb mechanics when it could just be, a paid cosmetic. Overwatch has just had paid cosmetics. You pay $3 and get whatever skin, and it's fine, and they still would have made loads and loads of money, but they know they can make far more money if it's just a loot box, and that's so deceptive, so predatory. And it's easy to say don't play these games when you see more and more games come out like this with microtransactions. It's harder to find the games that you want to play that don't have these things.
No, I agree.
You can go to indies, sure, but then you have an audience that don't know of as many indies and are more focused on the AAA games, or are focused on these franchises like Star Wars, FIFA, Call of Duty. Like that's their go-to, their one franchise they always love, and then these microtransactions are in there, and they don't have necessarily the same alternatives because that's what they've been playing forever.
Yeah,
they don't want to play a Battlefield because they specifically want to play Call of Duty, the Call of Duty mechanics and such.
Yeah.
So, I get what you're saying. Don't buy the game. If you can avoid it, that'd be great. But I understand when people just want to enjoy a game, but then fall victim for this.
Oh yeah.
So,
well, people who have fallen victim for this stuff, like if you buy the game and you don't know it's in there, right? Like that sucks, right? I don't think that microtransactions like that should exist. Period. Like there should not be artificial difficulty that encourage, or any of like the gambling mechanics. None of that should be allowed in video games. Period. But if you are an informed gamer, you exercise a modicum of willpower and don't play the game. Like, I'm sorry. I don't know. I understand what you're saying, but it's like, I mean, I loved the original Battlefield, Battlefront. I loved the original Star Wars Battlefront. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but I like Star Wars. And I have really good memories of playing like LAN games with my friends in Battlefield.
Galactic Conquest.
Yes.
So great.
But I'm steering clear completely of this latest version because it's modern EA and they're completely evil and I won't do anything with them. At least now, Nintendo is an awful company, but at least they don't have this kind of shit in most of their games. Like, don't they have something kind of like it in Splatoon or something?
I can't say for certain on Splatoon. They had, for the Wii U, they had released an HD port of Wii Sports, and they had the game that they sold you, or they could sell you like passes, like day passes to the game in a way that were only like $2 or something, which, if you're going to have a party with some people over and you're going to play Wii Tennis, that makes sense. And then you're not going to pick up that game because you don't have friends over constantly. You're going to switch to like Xeno Chronicles 3 or whatever Wii U exclusive is on there that has not been ported to Switch, is what I'm saying. Fine, that makes sense. I don't know of anything hyper aggressive and predatory. I will say it is incredibly frustrating for Nintendo to put out their DLC for games like The Legend of Zelda, which are only season passes. You do not have the option to buy individual DLC, and you have to pay upfront for something that has not been announced, and you don't know what you're buying, essentially.
That's predatory.
So I don't agree with that, and that's what they did with Breath of the Wild for Switch and Wii U. But and like the Mario Kart,
I was gonna say,
the Mario Kart Pass that they did. So that's frustrating to see. I typically wait out until all of this DLC is out and available and documented of what it is and how the reception was to buy it. But I think season passes to DLC is the dumbest thing in the world.
Yep, I agree. Well, on that note,
that cheery note,
the world's a dystopia run by corporations that hate you and just want your money. But we'll leave it there, I think.
Gardiner, where can they find you?
I'm right here on YouTube. If you're watching, if you're listening on ViewSync. You can also head over to subscribe to me. Subscribe to .me and find my links to social media platforms there. Jackson, where can they find you?
They can find me writing articles on ViewSync, and when I'm not on there, I'm only on Mastodon currently, and you can find me at Jack7 JAXSEVEN at tech.lgbt.
Nice.
At some point, I'll get better at saying that, but it's a mouthful.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's yet another episode in the bag, my friend.
Right.
I'm
number 4 done.
Number 4 is history. Thank you guys for listening, for hanging out with us here. And we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.